Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about a major snowstorm with frigid air, and for many of you, it really will be a December to remember. Welcome back everyone. Go ahead and smash that like button to help out the YouTube algorithm, and if you hadn't subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button to get all my notifications and watch all my daily updates. So we got a lot to talk about this morning. Let's take a look at the overall jet stream for as we get into Christmas Eve. And we got some colder air, but it's bottled up into Canada, into British Columbia, as well as Alberta. You can actually see where the jet stream kind of lies with this blue line with the colder air well to the north into Canada and the Pacific Northwest, and then traversing along our northern states and getting the tail end of it into portions of New England, while the rest of us start to see really almost record high temperatures for much of the South coming up for Christmas Eve. So let's take a look at the overall hazard map for this morning. And there's a lot of snow out there. It's just in the higher elevations, and they're going to be crushed out here in our western states over the next week or two with a lot of snow, and we'll delve into all the details. But you can see where they've got all the winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories up in the mountain regions of the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades and the Rockies here, with plenty of snow coming your way. And all the snow is going to be in our upper areas of New England here, into portions of Connecticut, Massachusetts here, into Vermont, New Hampshire, as well as into Maine, with some snow on the way for those regions. But yeah, as we go into Christmas Eve, so this is going to be a really warm Christmas for a good chunk of the central and southern U.S. with widespread 80s for your Christmas Eve. And you can see where the cold air is. There's technically not much for December standards, as that jet stream is well to the north. And as we get into Christmas Day, I mean, it just actually gets even warmer, so I mean, we're talking widespread 80s in Texas. You're going to remember this this December in Texas, because man, it's gonna, for many of you, it's going to be your warmest December ever. Right? I mean, as long as they can keep tracking records, and they track records for about 120 years in the state of Texas. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a December to remember, all right. You're going to be grilled in shorts for Christmas Day out here. But man, look at the cold air. It's just, again, well bottled to the north. So hey, you got to have cold air to have some snow. And there are going to be indications where some of you could get actually some snow on Christmas Day. So let's kind of take a look at this. We've got that main system that's actually coming in. It's first is going to start out the higher elevations up here in the Cascades, up here in our western states, but there are definitely indications where it's going to start to creep into the lower levels, and we could actually see a transition to some snow into places like Portland, Oregon here, and then, or with our snow line kind of well to the north in portions of northern New England. And we could see some snow in the portions of Montana, as well as North Dakota, where the rest of us is kind of well above average temperatures. So let's take a look at this and kind of zoom into say Portland, Oregon here, because the National Weather Service sent this out yesterday. And they're watching that air mass that we talked about in Alberta and British Columbia starting to sink south. And then as it sinks out, we still got the rain. We still got the atmospheric river and everything. But now we're going to transition to some snow. So while the details kind of remain uncertain, confidence is increasing for a prolonged period of below normal temperatures will begin this weekend, lasting well into next week. All right, so the combination of cold temperatures and occasional precipitation raises the possibility of snow and ice for the lowlands as early as Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So the latest indications suggest a strong air mass will turn even colder for next week, as forecast models suggest a high probability of accumulating snow reaching the lowest elevations of the Southwest Washington and Northwest Oregon, including Interstate 5 and 84 corridors. So there's a lot of snow going to be potentially on the way, and it actually starts on Christmas Day, and it really starts to intensify as we get beyond Christmas. Here's the latest map from the Climate Prediction Center And you can see where all the cold air it is. I mean, this is going to be almost downright brutal, in some places frigid. And this, you hardly ever see this on a map of below normal temperatures, this deep purple. And to really kind of 4 states, Washington and Oregon and Idaho, as well as Montana here, they could be seeing well below average temperatures coming up, and that cold air really doesn't go anywhere. So this is a map from the 27th through the 31st. So that's the most greatest concern period of kind of prolonged cold, and some of these areas may not even get above freezing for about 5 to 7 days. And we're talking possibly like Portland, Oregon areas not even getting a bit above freezing for about a 5 to 7 day period. So there's a prolonged cold spell on the way, while the rest of us are kind of well above average. And then especially along the coast here in Texas and to Louisiana here, with those that kind of record heat just kind of settling in. But let's take a look at the 27th, because yeah, that's when it gets kind of really starts to get intensify, because we're going to probably lay a little snowpack down into, say, Seattle places and to Portland areas. But really, as we get into this 27th time frame, that's when we have more snow. So once this snow starts to fall, and we may not give above freezing, it's probably not going to melt for a long period of time. So that is definitely a concern for areas that typically you just don't really see that much snow, even for the whole course of winter. So, but yeah, we could be looking at snow, a lot of snow, because we're still going to have that same atmospheric river in place, but instead of rain, it's just going to be snow, because it's going to be cold enough, not just in the higher elevations, but the lower elevations of Washington and Oregon and Northern California. But it's, again, really kind of confined to mainly those 4 states, with that deep purple is going to be setting in, and where the jet stream is going to be cold enough. And you typically don't even really need to have below average temperatures and up here in these neck of the woods to actually get snow, because you can still snow, because it's still going to be plenty cold to snow just on average. So yeah, places like North Dakota and to upstate Minnesota, going into Wisconsin here, are going to be seeing some snow by the time we get into that 27th time frame. And you can see some of the temperatures as we get to the 28th, and some of these are high temperatures, folks. I mean, we're talking 20s. Good chunk of Washington and Oregon into the 20s for high temperatures, and that deep Arctic air for highs. Montana and to North Dakota, these are teens for high temperatures. But look at the South. I mean, well into the 70s in Texas. So we're going to be seeing a lot of extremes, right? The cold air just keeps bottled up into the Pacific Northwest. And then there's a sharp gradient. I mean, that's a huge difference of, gosh, I mean, what is that, 90 degrees? That's a huge difference in temperatures from, say, Texas to Montana, right? So that's what we're going to be dealing with. And this particular air mass, as much of the country is like, hey, where's all the cold air? And the rest of the country, like, man, hey, when's it going to stop, right? I mean, because once this starts, and you gotta realize, once you have a snowpack on the ground, that's just going to aid in the fact that's going to be bringing those temperatures even down further, adding to about another 5 to 10 degrees colder than what you would normally see if you didn't have a snowpack on the ground. So this is going to be a prolonged event that could amplify, and by the time we get in that 29th time frame, that's when it starts getting really concerning, because we start to see more of that Arctic air really start to intrude into the areas. And now we're talking, gosh, teens possibly for highs in some of these locations, right? Below zero temperatures for, Montana and North Dakota. I mean, these are places could possibly get into the single digit for lows. Places like Portland, getting into Seattle. This is not something that you see on a regular basis, right? It's been years since you possibly seen some of this type stuff. So this is going to be a prolonged effect. So you definitely need to be prepared. Now, this map really kind of shows the true depiction of what we're looking at here. By the time we get into the 29th and 30th time frame, there's a high probability we've got well below average temperatures into Washington and Oregon and Idaho and Montana, going into parts of the Dakotas. Those are for those 2 days. High probability. but then that cold air really doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of oozes down further to southeast. Now we've got a moderate chance from the 29th through January 4th of still prolonged cold, but it sinks a little bit further south, right? And then by even as we get into further a slight risk for prolonged cold into parts of California, Nevada, going into Utah, as this air mass slowly shifts. So even good chunk of the Pacific Northwest and our western states are still under that slight risk of for prolonged cold all the way through January 4th. So if it starts around Christmas, we could be looking at, again, 7, maybe as much as 10 days of prolonged cold spell for a lot of these areas up here in our northwestern states, while the rest of us is wondering again where the cold air is, because it literally gets bottled up. And a lot of indications around the 30th time frame, this is when you might see your lowest temperatures, right? So there's been some crazy models out there showing maybe even below zero into places into Seattle and Portland. I don't think that's going to happen. That would be all-time record lows potentially. Now, I can't say that's a high probability, because that is definitely a lower probability for something like that to happen. But in this type of situation with snow on the ground and then, several inches every single day of snow, and it's compounding, and then you got that deep Arctic air, funneling in. Yeah, I mean, easily single digits in places you don't see single digits for years, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, even 30s and 40s below zero into Montana and parts of the Dakotas here. While again, Texas, that's a low temperature, guys. That is a low of 64. The normal high is 57. So you can see, I mean, the cold air, it's a feast or famine. I mean, it's extremely cold and then extremely warm. So this is what we're going to be dealing with really over the next 10 days. So, but to the east, it's like, hey, what's happening in the east? Well, you got plenty of warmth. I mean, all the cold air is well out northwest. So these are low temperatures, right? The 30th, these are lows for December 30th, 70s. That's low temperatures, right? I mean, that's some crazy stuff for the southeast. So yeah, that is something we're going to be dealing with. And wherever you see temperatures like this, of a temperature gradient like that, you always have to be looking out for possibly even more severe weather. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty of where exactly that's going to take place, but it's almost a given when you're seeing some of these temperature gradients like this clashing. When it finally starts to clash into that air mass, you're probably going to have some severe weather. So that's still on the table, before we get to the end of the month, is we could be looking at some more severe weather. Because I mean, look at this map by the time we get into New Year's Eve, right? That is some crazy stuff. You got that deep purple Arctic air, that polar lobe, 50 below average temperatures. And then not that far away into Arkansas, you're 30 degrees above average. That's an 80-degree swing, right? So that is not, I mean, there's got to be something happening within this corridor of possibly severe weather when you get those clashes like that. So there's just too much uncertainty exactly where that's going to potentially set up. But yeah, that is definitely a concern as we go, deeper towards the end of the month, as some of this air mass will slowly, you see how it shifts. I mean, it's not going to be moving anytime soon for a good 7 to possibly 10 days. Today's the 22nd. This is by the 31st. So you're still well above average in Texas and much of the Southeast and the Ohio Valley. And finally, we see that Arctic air on the move. But again, it doesn't really move very fast in a big way. So there's way too much uncertainty of showing you anything, say, beyond this, because you can see the difference in temperatures of 80 degrees and not that far away. So the forecast can be drastically different depending on where that cold air is going to be at that time. So, but look where the precipitation is through the 28th, right? I mean, we're under that high pressure and under that kind of record heat for a good chunk of the central U.S. We're high and dry, right? And not really a drop of rain. All the action is well out west. with most of this is in rain, but then a lot of it, this is going to be in the form of snow. And we'll go over some of these snowfall totals. But yeah, you can definitely see where for the Southeast and much of the Ohio Valley, yeah, our northern states into Minnesota, into Wisconsin, into Michigan, they're going to be seeing some snow out of this deal. But yeah, finally, as it gets on the move, right, as we get on the move, yeah, that we are looking at possibly indications where we have some elevated rain, and even some possibly flooding rains, and this could be maybe a particular setup for some severe weather. We'll just have to kind of fine tune this as we get closer, but that 29th, 30th, 31st time frame, finally, as some of that Arctic air tries to start being on the move, right, we're going to have that clash, and that's going to set up a pretty good rains along this area as well. So we have to be looking out for severe weather possibly with that action. But let's break down from the west, the central, and the east of where the snow is going to fall. I mean, look, you normally would see this in the higher elevations, but now all the way to the coast, right? I mean, all the way to the coast. This is snow for the next 9 days. So a lot of this is going to be in the higher elevations through Christmas, and then by Christmas Day it's going to start falling in the lower elevations, and we're going to be getting several inches of snow in the lower elevations possibly every single day, right? So these can add up to some big totals and really compound that snowpack. And as that Arctic air really intrudes in this area, that is the concern of a prolonged cold, frigid air event. And then a lot of snow into areas that you just typically don't see that much snow. So, and then, yeah, that snow line finally gets on the move with possibly a couple inches in Montana, going into the Dakotas. We go into our central states, and there's that snow line kind of well to the north where that cold air is going to be in place. With possibly up to a foot of snow in some of these areas of Minnesota and to Wisconsin here. But as we get into our eastern states, again, it's kind of well to the north. There's not much cold air to be working with here, like I kind of showed you through the end of the year. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. So catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.